In this video, I'm going to give you my account of the good, the bad, and the downright ugly of the Mallorca 312 cycling event, and also share a few tips in case you're thinking of doing this event for another big day or days out. So get ready to hear the truth about this epic cycling adventure. First up, good stuff. The registration experience was great. So you turn up for registration the day before and you go to this nice pop-up village with lots of buzz around it. You register, you get your kit, you can hang around, there's lots of pop-up shops, live bands, food. There's just a real big buzz around the place and it really revs you up and gets you excited for what's going to come. When you actually get riding, it is a different experience to what I've done before. 8,000 other riders on mainly closed roads, with a few exceptions here and there, but primarily car-free, bike-friendly, and just lots of different peoples and bikes when you're out riding. That first stint when you leave the flat, you hit the first climb, and it's just, you look up, cyclists ahead of you, you look back, cyclists behind you. It's a pretty amazing feeling. And on the whole, the cyclists you're with, they're a pretty friendly bunch. You can certainly ride along, share the experiences and the suffering with them, have a chat with them, motivate each other. You'll always find someone you can talk to. Overall, great experience. Let's talk about bikes. If you like bikes, there is certainly much bike porn to be interested in. You've got 8,000 riders. There is a shed load of bikes, all different brands. So whatever bikes you are into, there is a bike there that will take your fancy. We even saw a couple out on a tandem on the ride. I mean, it was a big old hefty thing. I personally wouldn't have wanted to be riding on it, but I guess it's that shared experience. And talking to nice people, there was quite a lot of support out on the roadside throughout the ride. People coming out of their houses in little towns and villages, clapping you on, shouting at you. I think they were shouting nice things at us anyway, but just overall encouragement, certainly throughout the ride, and also at the end when you get back to the village, ride through the finish line, they're all lined on either side, giving you a clap, shouting you on, encouraging you, music's pumping. Hundreds of people outside, obviously some of them that might have finished before you, but a lot of friends, family were there, just really added to the overall warmth and welcoming as you return home. And talking of that shared experience and all being one as a community and a tribe, you do of course get the ride jersey. So this one was Go Bit kit, so if you're used to that, you can put your sizing in when you register, so you pick up the size you've requested. If it isn't the right size, you cannot change it at registration. You have to go over to the village and get them to swap it out, but it wasn't really an issue. They had a shed load of them ready, so if you're into that sort of thing, you want to wear the colours, which actually, so on this version this year, it wasn't mandatory to wear the jersey, but I think I heard from next year they are going to mandate that you must wear the official ride jersey, just because I think they had a few interlopers that might have joined in halfway through the ride, got onto the road, stopped at their feed station, was consuming their stuff, and just generally got a bit of a free ride. Better get used to wearing the nice colours of the official jersey. Along with that, you also get a lovely matching musette. And you also get a little card with all the ride profiles on and emergency contact numbers, just in case you have a really big issue. And the main thing, when you get to the end, cross the finish line, you get something adorned around your neck. The beautiful 312 medal.
Even if you don't do the 312, you still get the medal.
Yeah, that's the good thing. Even if you've done the short distance 167, you still get the medal.
Yeah.
There we go. There was a little space on the back for you to commemorate the event with your name. Oh, what's Tom's? I think that's time.
Yeah.
And distance.
Yeah.
Distancia. I didn't know I was bilingual. And I think you could actually have got that engraved back at the village when you'd finished, if you wanted to. So official kit, they also did matching bibs as well. You could go FKW in it if you wanted to. I chose not to, but if you're entering next time, you will have to. So that was the good bits about the ride, but unfortunately now for some of the bad stuff. Nutrition. Let's talk about nutrition. It is key for these kind of rides, and although the food stations were reasonably well spaced out at good intervals and they were well staffed with people there to help you out, actually the quality of what was on offer was pretty bad. The first one I remember rocking up to, and it was just water out of a water Bowser truck, basically a big like tank with a pipe coming out of it. You just fill your bottle up at it, but it was just water. One of the things about these kind of rides is it was hot, it was pretty sweaty. You want to keep yourself topped up with electrolytes. If you haven't taken your own, what they did give you there, not tablets, but were these things, were little salt electrolytes. I think even with a bit of caffeine, which I picked them up and thought, yeah, brilliant, let's just nick those. Never didn't even know you could get these in a little capsule pill format. Never tried them, no idea if they would work for me, if they would be of any benefit, if they would cause me any issues. If you like a particular brand or with a particular ratio of electrolytes, you're going to be better off bringing your own stuff and not relying on what is on offer. Now, one top tip, having never seen these before, although they look familiar to pills, I did see one fella who will remain nameless, who thought they weren't pills that you take orally, but you put them in your bottle. But thankfully, we had a kind rider there who told us, no, they don't go in the bottle, because actually it just sits in the bottle and doesn't do anything. You do actually take them like a little vitamin pill. I remember going on to the second feed stop and the food offering was pretty poor. I don't know how many bananas it is safe for a human to consume, but I did eat quite a lot of bananas. They had some orange segments there. Again, I don't really know what benefit that is in energy mixing or anything else. Cokes were very hit and miss. They did have some cold drinks in fridges at some places, but other places they'd either run out or didn't stock any. The other worst thing about them was the sandwiches for proper food. Sometimes if you're out riding and you've taken your own nutrition, you've got energy bars, maybe you're snacking on some energy gels at some point, but sometimes you just need some proper food just to get inside you. And the one offering they had was this pretty nasty white bread sandwiches with Nutella inside. So I normally quite like a bit of Nutella, but they were obviously mass produced, pretty rank. Nutrition was bad. And I did read some of the stuff on the comments after it, and that was one of the big things that came up around people just complaining about the quality of the food stops, what was available, and it seemed no one had a really good thing to say about the offerings. If you've done a lot of prep work, put a lot of effort into your training and you're planning for this, you probably want to plan your own nutrition, take your own nutrition. To go alongside the food stops, you also have shops that are available on the route, and we came across a few good ones. There's always we've been there a couple of times before, let me get this right because I always say it wrong, the Orange Juice Man Shack, Orange Juice Shack Man, something like that. But it's around the top of the Sacalobra and it's just before you start riding up the Puig Major. That's very popular. It's not an official food stop. Actually, the one is just a little bit further on from the Orange Juice Shack. We stopped there. They're well stocked. You can get a good sandwich there, plenty of drinks. They also do have a toilet there if you want to queue. But again, a lot of cyclists have the same idea. It's very busy. We came across another one further on. We'd been up a few more hills. There's one Cold Ale Claret. You come up after that, you go through a little village, stop there. Again, the challenge you're going to have that we found similar to the food stops is they start to run out of stuff. I think I went into one of the shops and I grabbed the last bottle of water. It was a 5-litre big can of water. I thought I was going to get mugged on the way out for it because it was the last one in the shop. You know, we also went in there trying to get a can of Coke or cans of Red Bull. The official food stops and the shops you're going to meet along the way, you're always going to have that risk that is being cleaned out, stuff's gone. Thinking about your timing, we'll come on to a little bit later about getting away on time, but one of the things you've got to think about, again, those feed stations, is how long you are stationary for, how long you're stopping for. Sometimes you do need to stop, just rest the legs, catch your breath, just take a moment, especially if you've been struggling up a bit of a hill. You just need to be careful though, how often you stop, how frequent those stops are, and how long you stop for then, because that time adds up. Looking at our stats, I think our total ride time was around 7 hours 30. I didn't think we stopped too much actually. I think we did all right, but we still had about an hour and 10 of stop time of that, which adds up, and you just need to be careful you don't spend too long at a food stop or a store or just having a rest. Next thing, etiquette. It was nice. We did get onto a few groups. We got into them. You find someone new to chat to. Where are you from? How are you doing? Have you been here before? What are you eating? Where do you get your water from? It's quite nice. You just need to be a little bit careful about who's around you. We found that we were in certain groups and the roads out there are pretty decent. Some of the more back lane cycle paths were a little bit sketchy, and sometimes we found that just riders in front were not pointing or shouting out holes. You just had to really pay attention to what was coming up, because not necessarily that someone else is going to give you an indication that there was a hazard ahead. And just think about who you're riding with, how chatty they are, if they're pointing anything out, and just be mindful of you might come across hazard that haven't been pointed out to you. Okay, so specific to the Majorca 312 ride, we only did the short distance, which will come on to some of the reasons why we did that. So the 167, actually, as a ride, it was a pretty nice ride. So it was front loaded with climbing. You got most of the climbs done pretty early on in the ride, and they were very nice Majorcan climbs, as you would expect. And the route itself, you then go circle around, nice coastal roads, lovely views. And the last third of it, it was a bit back lane, country lanes. It was just, at the end of it, you just wanted to get through it, grind it out and get it done. I think the 167 and the 225, certainly if you're looking at it as an experience and the visuals of it, the environment, what I have heard about the longer 312 route is actually the additional loop that you have to go round. Isn't that great? It's obviously a lot more effort for doing it, but you don't get that rich reward of beautiful scenery and stuff. I don't think, unless you're really keen on doing the 312 distance and it is a goal for you, I don't think you're really getting much more out of going for the 312 compared to, say, the 225. All right, now let's get to the real bad stuff in this. Basically, that was the carnage. Crashes, broken bikes, probably broken limbs, blood spilt across the tarmac. It was not without incident. Thankfully, I managed to stay upright and incident-free, but you certainly saw a few things going on. So from memory, I remember setting out, and in the first 5K, you cycle past a little coastal route with some little boulders on the side, and there was some rider who'd obviously come down there quite hard, and the top tube of his bike had snapped. I think it was a nice Specialized. Within the first 5K of setting off, he was on the deck of his bike and his bike was totaled. I remember the first climb we hit, that was when you started to hear ambulances. So it is a closed road event, but the traffic that is on there are ambulances, and you can just hear them pretty much constantly coming up, going on. A few medic motorbikes, and we did see a few instances. So I remember on the first climb up, only about halfway up it, and some guy, I don't think he had come off his bike. I think he just had some kind of medical emergency, struggling to breathe, and the ambulances had turned up and stopped. Now, you are going uphill with a lot of other riders around you and also downhill. And unfortunately, there were a number of crashes that we either saw the aftermath of or heard about from other people. But whether it's people just getting too caught up in the moment, just an unfortunate freak incident, you're riding with someone else who you don't know and maybe their riding skills are a little bit different to yours, you just need to be really careful about who you're riding with, the conditions. There was a little bit of rain at certain points, so it would have been a little bit slippy coming down, but not to labour too much on it. I mean, I remember getting to the orange juice shack, having a little rest, and there were a couple of ambulances there, and there was one guy who was in a pretty bad state. I didn't kind of do my intrepid news reporting and get in there and push some paramedics out of the way with my camera to get the interview. I didn't want to interrupt the medical, but yeah, he was kind of walking, staggering, let's say, with a bit of help. He then collapsed. He had blood coming from his face. They stick an IV drip in his arm to get a few fluids back into him. Yeah, he was not in a good shape. I think one of the guys I felt most sorry for was we got into within about 5K to go from the line. And one guy was I don't think he'd crashed. He would just maybe had sunstroke or was dehydrated, but he was just sat on the side of the road. Thankfully, some paramedics were with him just in the shade. You could see though, I guess maybe his fueling strategy was out. It was a hot day. You are with a bunch of different mixed ability people. I think there were some people there who had never done this kind of event, this kind of riding. It was hot. You needed to keep an eye on your energy levels, how much you're sweating to make sure you get your electrolytes up and running. You need to be careful, the weather, it was raining. Some people, you're going up, you got to go downhill very fast. I mean, one of the best bits was the Puig Major descent. That is always a particular favourite. That's quite fast. You just need to be prepped for it. And the other common thing, and I guess it's quite obvious really, there was 8,000 other riders there, is just the number of mechanicals. Every time you go on a few more kilometres and there just seemed to be someone on the side of the road fixing a puncture. I think the guy I felt most sorry for was at whatever it was, 5:30, 6 a.m. in the morning when we're riding to the start line. We hadn't even got to the start line yet. Some guys on the side of the road already punctured, not even made it to the start line. Just make sure you've got supplies for it. I think there's some additional stocks maybe at the food stops. I can't remember if there were, or put your hand up, one of the friendly riders will no doubt stop, but just make sure you've got some spares with you because it just seemed to be littered with punctures and mechanicals. I think it was just a bit of unfortunate. I mean, the two of us, we did all right. We didn't have any mechanical issues, and I'm on tubeless tyres, you're on old antiquated inner tubes, which was quite quaint. Well, I guess we got lucky. others didn't. Overall, I just wonder if there are too many riders on events like these. Every year I think this has probably bumped up the numbers, and at 8,000 riders, maybe it's a profits thing for the event. It obviously takes quite a lot of planning, quite a lot of effort and energy and cost to put these kind of events on. Maybe they're just trying to maximize profit they can get to it, but is 8,000 too many? Maybe. Now, of course, you're all setting off pretty much at the same time. There is a constant stream of these 8,000 riders as you are starting out, so it's very condensed, very bunched up at the start. You hit a climb after a few kilometers, so that obviously starts to stretch things out a bit. And then as you go on throughout the ride, you've obviously got the splits for where you start taking different directions for the different ride distances. Towards the end of it, again, if you're one of the slower groups, you will find that there's a bunch of slower riders or slower groups that are going at a pretty steady pace. And then the other guys that are trying to cane it for the best possible time are coming past you in groups. So you've got that little mix on quite narrow country lanes of riders doing steady state, and then these other riders coming up pretty fast and going past you. So again, you just need to be aware of who's around you and who's coming up. All right, now then, let's have a look at some of the top tips for doing events like these. And number one is preparation and training. So the two of us were together doing it throughout the day, and I would say that we probably had slightly different overall experiences of how that ride went for us. One of us had quite a nice day out, really quite a relaxing day out, and maybe someone else had just to put a little bit more effort in. We'll see. But I think a big part of that is training and the amount you put into it. And I did a little bit of research on that. So we did our event at the end of April, and I think we signed up for it the October before that. So that's not quick maths, but I think that's probably about 6 or 7 months worth of training we did. So I looked back at the Strava stats of the volume of training that I did compared to my good friend who was with me on the ride, and I did total riding within that training block of 6-7 months, a mix of both out in the real world and on the turbo. I did 180 hours of riding, which was 5,000 kilometers. And I also mixed that up with a little bit of strength training. So total workout time, 24 hours. Each of my sessions is normally an hour, so that's 24 sessions. I do remember I did have a few injuries throughout that little training period, certainly for a window of 4 to 6 weeks. I didn't do any strength training. My good friend, compared to my 180 hours of training, you did 77 hours indoor and outdoor riding. Mine was 5,000 distance, yours was just a beautiful 2,000 kilometers. And rather than strength training with the weights, you decided to do a few hours of rowing.
I did do strength training with weights.
Did you?
Yeah. I just don't put it on Strava.
How many?
After each rowing section, about 20 minutes.
Oh, okay. Well,
deadlifts and all that stuff, and then
you
did
15 rowing sessions, 3 hours. Okay, so we'll give you a little bit more for your little strength workout.
Yeah, thank you, Tosser.
Boom. Okay. So all in all, I was around 200 hours. You were well under half of that, probably about 80,
all the way, mate.
80, 85. Now, that was preparation, so looking at the actual stats through the ride, I've got the ride stats for the Mallorca ride, and looking at heart rate and how we varied across that. So for me, I had a pretty nice day out. I was 20% in zone 1, endurance zone, 65% of my ride time in zone 2, aerobic, and just the 15% of my time in zone 3, tempo. Probably going up some of the climbs, just setting a steady state up there. I never got above zone 3, I was never in zone 4, threshold zone, whereas you, my friend, 50% of your time, 50 in zone 2, aerobic, and pretty much 50% of your time split between zone 3 and zone 4. Now, 44% of that was zone 3 tempo, and the rest of it was at threshold as well. Yeah, where you spent, let's say, 50% of your time in zone 3 tempo and above, I spent 15% of my time in zone 3 tempo, and I am going to put that down to training and the level of effort put into the ride beforehand.
Got it done though, didn't I?
You did get it done.
There we go.
We did need a little Red Bull with Wingstop to get you going in, but fair play. When it's done, it's done, and we got it done. I think it would be fair to say, so, and actually it's quite telling really on the colder claret, as it's
I bonked.
one of your favourite colours. You were struggling up that a bit.
But that was down to nutrition and forgetting to eat.
I
forgot nutrition for 1 hour. Yeah, we forgot to.
And maybe a little bit of prep. For me, it was more about the togetherness, the lived experience of the two of us, and not going out and trying to set personal goals and experiences. So overall, I was happy. I had quite a nice day out doing the 167 because of the volume of training that I had done. Maybe another day it wouldn't have gone so well because the 167, so still over 100 miles, elevation, there is a lot of elevation in this, certainly front loaded. I think it was around 2,200 meters. Even the 167 is still, no, I was about to say walk in the park, but cycle in the park still requires focus, training and effort. All right, next tip, think about the heat, have a look at it. So for us, this ride was end of April. It's normally quite a nice place, Mallorca, but I think it was unseasonably warm for the season this time round. When we set out at before 6 a.m. in the morning to get to the start line, even then it was 17 degrees. We did have a gilet on, which was pretty good actually, because we were hanging around at the start line for half an hour, 3/4 of an hour or more, but we did take it off before we got going and then didn't really need it for the rest of the day. There was a spot of rain at some point during the ride. Thankfully it didn't go beyond that because I didn't have a cycling rain jacket with me. I should have again prepped and checked. So it was warm, it was quite overcast in the morning, but then come the afternoon, the heat did come out. So again, having that additional effect as you're riding, and make sure you got your sunscreen on, don't want to come back sunburnt. So hydration, sunscreen, and just have a look ahead at the weather and what type of clothing you need. Now the other thing about heat when you're thinking about it is acclimatizing it. We were coming from the UK, which, let's be fair, the winter here seemed to just drag on. I mean, I'm sure we were almost shoveling snow, not quite, March, April time. It was just cold, wet, windy, rainy. It seemed to drag on forever, and we'd gone from that straight to Majorca where it was mid-high 20 degrees C. Didn't seem to affect us too much, but again, maybe you want to think about acclimatizing when you get there, and we cut it quite fine. I think we didn't get in there till the Wednesday or Thursday we arrived, so we had planned to go out for a little bit of an acclimatization ride on the Friday. Those plans were put into chaos by British Airways not flying our bikes out with us on the plane, so we had to mess around with those. So we didn't do that acclimatization ride. We pretty much went in cold straight into the 312 ride. So you might want to spend a little bit, get there a little bit earlier, get a few days in acclimatizing. Next tip. Now, it may be a little bit specific to this Majorca 312 ride, but it's all around the getaway times. There is a lot of riders, 8,000 riders, and there are cut-off points. So even if you're riding the 167, but definitely the 225 and the 312, you have to have made it to certain points on the route. Otherwise, they will shut you down and say you cannot continue on. Now, one of the key things to that is, in order to make some good progress and hit those, is to get away pretty early. And one of the things we found, we got up, I reckon we got up at 5 a.m. in the morning. We got up, got down to breakfast, and found that pretty much every other cyclist in the hotel had already left. The bike store, where all our bikes were kept, was pretty much emptied out. There were only a few in there, including ours. There was pretty much no one. Breakfast, they had all gone. So we quite sharply got on our toes, just got a little bit of breakfast in, snacking on the way there, got the bikes ready. And by the time we got to the start line, I would say we got there probably about 20 past 6 or so, joined what seemed to be the back of the queue, but then we turned around and then there's a lot of people behind us as well. And we got away just after 7 a.m, which actually I didn't think was too bad. I was kind of half expecting to be stuck there for an hour or more. You know, we only did the 167, so we were never really under any big time constraints or pressure to do it. But if you're trying to do the 225 or the 312 and you're even further back than that and you're starting way past 7 a.m. in the morning, it's just that mindset that you're already from the start line going to be under the pump for time, and it's going to be playing on you. So this kind of event, they did a VIP pass, which basically just gives you priority for getting away. We didn't bother with that. If it's something that is an option for you and you want to go for the bigger distances and you want to make sure you're going to get there within the time cuts with plenty of time, maybe it's something to look at the VIP so you can get away in one of the first groups. All right, so I guess one of my big tips, maybe second only to training, is nutrition. Nutrition is key. You're out in the saddle for a long time. You need to keep replenishing energy levels, keep them stocked up, and you need to think about how you're going to fuel the ride. You want to have a plan, especially if you're doing the longer distances, of what nutrition you are going to consume and in what format you are going to consume that in. So is it bars? Is it chews? Is it drink mixes? Although it's a pain, you really want to take that on board with you. So whether that's, I saw people with top tube bags stuffed with with foods. Obviously, people with massive hamster pouches in their jersey pockets. I think I even saw people stuffing bars up the legs of their bib shorts. Just take your own nutrition. The best thing I saw, a girl who was riding, and she had printed out her nutrition plan, what she was going to eat, when she was going to eat it, and she had taped it to the top tube of her bike so she knew exactly when to eat stuff. I'm pretty sure her nutrition plan was nailed on. As part of that training preparation beforehand, actually practice your nutrition when you're out training for rides or even on the turbo, and even practice what you're going to eat. Some people are quite comfortable eating on the bike, some people like to stop, and also take into consideration the types of food you're going to eat. So if you're taking a particular energy bar, test it out. Sounds odd, right? But can you chew it? Can you actually swallow it? Sometimes you get a new bar to eat, you're out riding, and you'll just seem to be chewing it for hours because it just is really hard to swallow. So make sure you practice your nutrition. Just think about what you're going to need to consume in the next hour or so, get them out of your pocket, open the packets already, stick them back in so you don't have to mess around with trying to open it as you're going along. But very much like the training, also train your nutrition. Just make sure you are comfortable with what you're eating it and when you're going to eat it. Find the right product that works for you. Think about your bike choice. For us, I guess the heroes of our ride were the bikes we were on, although they were a right pain to get there, mainly due to British Airways not putting them on the flight, and then rather than having them there and being able to set them up the day we arrived, we had to mess around for the next day and a half, going back to the airport, waiting for them to come in on another flight. It was all then a bit of a rush on the Friday morning to go and collect the bikes, get them back to where we were staying, get them built up, check they all worked okay, and then stick them in a taxi and getting up to the village to register. It was a lot of hassle, but overall, we both agreed that we were relieved that we went to the hassle of taking our own bikes with us and having them on the ride, because that's just one of those unknowns if you're not used to the bike that you're riding. If you hire a bike out there, certainly for some of the longer distances, I think it just makes much more sense to be in your own comfortable saddle on your own bike that's set up exactly how you want it. I think normally if I was going away just for a day or two, I probably wouldn't have bothered taking my own bike. I would have hired one, but because we were doing a specific event, specific distances, we knew we were going to spend quite a bit of time in the saddle. We just went with the option of taking our own bikes, and overall it was the right choice. Now obviously, if taking your bike is an option and you're going to rent one, just think about the number of riders out there. And there were a lot of riders on rental bikes. So if you're going to rent a bike, get in early, get it booked, because otherwise you might have slim pickings on the options available. But make sure it's the right bike for the event. We did the last part of the ride with a lovely guy from London called Sam, and his choice of bike was a very aggressive aero bike, which I think, having maybe got halfway through it, he was very much regretting his choice of bike. He was suffering, and I wasn't, on my nice endurance, comfortable style bike with its tubeless tyres. Is that aero bike really the right one you want to be taking? It probably isn't. And the last thing on bikes, if you are taking your own bike, you've obviously got to get it there and transport it, which means a bike box. If you don't have your own bike box, just think about renting one early. The question I ask myself is, would I ride the Majorca 312 or a similar kind of event again? And my answer is maybe. I'm not going to go out and actively pursue something, find a new challenge, but I think maybe if someone suggested something, I would be willing to sign up for it, for a little bit of companionship and riding alongside that lived experience. But at the moment, I'm not feeling the urge to go and register again for next year's Mallorca 312. Overall though, there was a lot of faffing around with the bikes going missing and just rushing around a bit, but it was a good event. There was very much a carnival atmosphere, the registration was good, lots of riders, maybe a few too many, but the ones you were with, very good atmosphere, very friendly. It was a nice experience certainly to get out on those Majorcan roads. Not that cars are typically an issue over there, but closed roads. Overall, great experience, beautiful places to ride, scenery, sights, people, bikes. It was worth it. I'm glad I did do it. So if you've ridden the 312 or something similar, let me know if you've got any more tips or advice in the comments below, and check out the day we rode the Majorca 312, or at least part of it, in this video here.